Nicholas Wagoner Browning was born on February the 9th, 1992, to John W. Browning, a successful lawyer at a local firm, and Tamara Browning, a homemaker. Nicholas grew up with two younger brothers, 14-year-old Gregory and 11-year-old Benjamin. They all lived together in a nice family home in the suburbs of Cockeysville, Maryland. Nicholas attended Delaney High School near Timonium. There he was an honor student, he played varsity lacrosse and golf, and he also practiced the cello. Most people called him Nick for short. Nick also skied and was a Boy Scout under his father. He was a scoutmaster, a church leader, and a pillar of the community. Nick was the Browning family's golden boy. He was bred from a young age by John to be perfect, and any sort of disobedience or mistake was met with swift and painful retribution. Nick's home life was tumultuous and complicated. He often spoke about it with his closest friends, Alex Smith, Taylor Delaney, and Ryan Fingles. Nick made it a habit of calling his father names like Hitler, and he even joked on occasion about wanting to end him for riding him so hard. He acted out by sneaking alcohol and ignoring his responsibilities. He would do things like hanging out with his friends and play video games instead. Students who knew Nick from afar described him as a little mean. He was not above heckling a disabled person or calling people names. His teachers, however, described him as a saint. Nick was somewhat of a social butterfly. He could be charming, charismatic, outspoken, and intelligent when he needed to be, and that was what made what happened to the Brownings so shocking for the people that only knew the gentler side of Nick. Cockeysville is a quiet little town named after the founding family. It has a population of around 20,000 people. It has tight-knit communities with churches, scenic parks, and quality public schools. You'll find few safer places to raise a family in America, and that is why the Brownings settled down there. They lived in one of the more affluent neighborhoods in the suburbs of Cockeysville with their children. Little did John and Tamara Browning know that the one place they felt the safest was where danger would eventually find them. Friday, February the 1st, 2008, started normal enough for Nick Browning. After school, his father dropped him off at Ryan Fingal's house, where Alex and Taylor were already waiting for him. Ryan lived in a community called Springdale. It had fancy lawns and pools about 1 mile away from Nick's house. Sometime after 2 p.m, they started playing lacrosse. They then moved over to video games. And finally, they wound down for the night with 2 movies, namely Robin Big and Accepted. Mr. Fingles was with the boys and he was also entertaining friends too. They ordered food from a restaurant called Giorgio's. Sometime around midnight, Nick had a crazy idea. He told the boys he was going to walk back home and get his car, so that they could drive around Cockeysville at night. He had no particular destination in mind. Nick was only 15 years old at the time. He was still a week out from his birthday. Driving a car without a license in the middle of the night must have sounded like fun. While the boys slept, Nick snuck out of Ryan Fingal's home. He then returned at some time around 6 a.m. Alex's call allegedly woke him up. He said he was sleeping in the car after making it to the garage. According to Nick, his parents were still up when he arrived. He said he stayed up for 2 more hours waiting for them to go to sleep. This would be his chance to take the car keys. However, he drifted off before they did. Alex and the boys had chosen to call him when they woke up at around 6 a.m. They were confused that he hadn't returned yet. Nick then walked back to the Fingles residence by himself and the day continued as usual. He took a shower, ate breakfast with the boys, and then called his parents on the Fingles house phone to tell them that he'd not be coming home early because he was going to the mall with the boys. However, no one answered the phone. Nick eventually switched to using his cell phone to call home after several more tries. He never managed to get a hold of them until he returned to the Browning household later that evening. Jump forward a few hours and the boys were returning to the Browning residence towards 5 p.m. Nick and the boys were looking forward to a long night of fun, but before that he seemed determined to check in on his family. By this stage, he'd been calling them for hours with no reply. They came to the site of a bloodbath when they ventured into the house, entering using Nick's access code. Nick found his father dead on the couch in the living room and stood there frozen. The rest of Nick's friends reacted how you'd expect 15-year-olds who'd never seen a dead body to. Some refused to look, while others comforted Nick, a teenager who was seemingly stunned by loss and surprise. When he managed to gather himself, Nick climbed up the stairs to search for the rest of his family. He found them all dead in their beds. Taylor called on Mr. Smith, who'd been chaperoning them this entire time. Mr. Smith turned hysterical at the sight of his dead friend. He placed a call to the police department immediately. The police arrived at the Browning residence shortly after to a scene that made their blood curdle. Upon initial inspection of the crime scene, the police could tell something was not adding up immediately. The broken glass pointed to signs of burglary gone wrong, yet nothing seemed to be missing, nor were there any signs of forced entry. How the victims passed was also troubling. It was like they were executed before they could react. Why would a burglar execute his victims before trying to get their valuables first? The investigators were certain that the boys knew something. They took them all to the police station. There, they were interrogated by a detective in a quest to reconstruct the previous night. They had to determine if the boys were suspects for the murder of the Brownings. The police investigator instantly went to work, pressuring all 4 15-year-old boys. In hindsight, they could have asked for a lawyer present at any point. This would have put an end to the questioning, but either due to their ignorance, their fear, or just wanting to help, they kept talking to the investigator.
Yeah. Dude, my name's Dave. Dave. What's your name, Ryan? Yes. All right, good. Thanks for coming around here with us. It's kind of been a long day. Just need some basic information from you. It's Ryan, right? Yes. What's your middle name, Ryan?
Middle name? Yes. Andrew.
What's your last name?
Fingles. Fingles.
I'm a homicide detective. Some bad stuff has happened tonight. I need you to be 100% honest with me. I want you to tell me what's been going on and explain. Who are you with all day?
I was with Ryan, Alex, and Nick. We were at Ryan's house in the morning because we slept over there last night.
What time did you guys get over there last night?
I went over there right after school.
You got there after school about what time?
Well, I went home first, and then my mom drove me over there around like 2:50 maybe.
2:15 or
2:50.
2:50?
Yeah.
Okay, what did you guys do there last night?
Mostly, we were playing crossed out front, and then we played video games, basically. Watched a movie.
What movie did you watch?
We were watching, what's it called? I remember we're watching Robin Big at first, and then we were looking through the movies. Accepted. We were watching Accepted.
Okay.
We started that around like 10:15 or something.
Okay, around 10:15 last night?
Yeah. And I fell asleep like halfway through it.
So,
And then
where were you guys in? What part of the house were you guys in?
in like the living room, the main room, family room, I guess you want to call it.
Where's your parents at?
Yes.
What's your last name?
Smith.
Oh, that's right. I just talked to your dad. Your dad's here. When you guys leave, I think he's going to take care of the other boys, get them to where they got to go. Okay. Any other nickname other than Alex?
No.
Street name or anything like that?
No.
You play lacrosse for Delaney?
Yes. You guys spent the entire evening together yesterday?
Yes.
You leave the house at all last night?
Just walk around the neighborhood.
Okay. How far do you live from where he lives?
Half a mile.
Half a mile? Did you guys go over there?
No.
Did he?
Yes.
What time did he go over there?
Like 12:30.
Last night?
Yes.
What did he go home for?
Truthfully, we were going to just take his car out.
I'm sorry, what was his name?
Nick Browning. Just take his car out for a little drive.
Okay. Did you guys do that?
No.
All of you were there?
Yes. Nick said that he was there. That when he got there, the lights were still on.
Okay.
And so he just was in the car, and he said he fell asleep. And like 3 hours later, or how many hours later, Alex called him and see where he was. He's like, "Oh, I fell asleep in the car," and then he came back to my house.
So basically after that, when I woke up, started watching this TV.
So you fell asleep?
Yeah, I woke back up around like 12 and went to bed. Went to like an actual bed. I was like on a couch.
Okay.
On a chair.
Woke up around midnight?
Yeah.
What bed did you go to?
I went into his brother's room, and then.
Was Joe there?
Joe, no, he was not there.
Where's he?
He was at a friend's house.
Okay. So you went in Joe's room?
Yeah, and then the parents had friends over, and they weren't going to sleep there. Then they did.
The friends of the Fingles did?
Yeah, they're friends. So they came into Joe's room to sleep. So I had to get up, went down to the basement, and slept on the futon.
What time was that about? Do you remember?
I don't know what time that was. It was probably like 1:30 maybe.
When you woke up to go to Joe's room, where were all the other boys?
They were sleeping on the couch next to me and up in his room.
Okay. Was Nick there?
Yes.
You sure? That's real important.
No, I don't think he was.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, no.
He wasn't there.
He went out, I think. I don't
Taylor,
know.
I'm going to tell you now.
Yes.
This is a murder case.
Yes.
You're 15 years old.
Yes.
You cannot lie to me.
Alright.
Because you will go to jail for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Nick was not in there?
No.
Do you know that he left?
What?
Do you know that he left?
I mean, yeah, I guess because I didn't see him there. I didn't know he was leaving.
Okay.
To tell the truth, I really don't know the exact times.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I didn't have like a clock I was looking at.
I'm with you. If you haven't figured out by now, something really serious has happened to the Browning family. You're 15 years old. I need you to be 100% honest. The other boys have been honest with me. You can't take up and lie. Okay?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to take me through the last 28, 29 hours, what's been going on. So you guys, from what I know, all spent the night over at Things, right?
Yes.
What did you guys do from there?
Well, we slept bedroom. Then in the morning,
Nick skipping over lock. Okay?
What?
I want you to take it slow and not skip out stuff, okay?
Alright.
So last night you guys went there.
Yeah.
What did you guys do while you were there?
We ordered food from Giorgio's and watched Smoking Aces and Accepted and ran around outside a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we basically just all went to sleep
Okay. Where were you guys watching TV and stuff? What room of the house?
in the living room.
Were Ryan's parents around?
Yes.
Was there other people there too?
Yes.
Ryan's parents?
Friends.
Gotcha. Who else was in the living room with you?
Nick.
Who else? Did Ryan go up to his room?
Yeah, Ryan went up to his room and Taylor went up to Ryan's brother's room and then moved downstairs.
Okay. Why did Taylor have to go downstairs?
Because Ryan's parents' friends were sleeping in his room.
Okay. Are you sure you've been 100%? Is there something you should be telling me? Because I'm not telling you how important this is right now. Is there something you think?
Actually, he told me that he was going to go out, but he didn't tell me where he really was going.
Okay.
He said,
Taylor, I appreciate this. I mean, this is...
he said he was going to go out. I mean, I don't know. He said he was going to go out, and then...
What did he tell you about that?
He said he might go and take the car, but he ended up...
Take his parents' car?
It was his car.
This entire ordeal lasted 6 whole hours, after which the police had already cracked the case of this mass murder. The lead detective started by questioning Nick, Alex, Taylor and Ryan about the day before. They all exhibited various signs of nervousness and concern, especially when pressured, but Nick remained calm. Even when he talked about his parents, who he had just discovered dead only a few hours before, his reaction could have been an unconscious defense mechanism to help him cope with the grief, but experts deduced that it was more likely that he didn't care at all. Throughout the investigation, the secrets of the Browning family's lives came to the open. The police learned that Nick endured routine verbal and physical lashings from his father, although the latter was never confirmed. Taylor remembered one instance of John calling Nick a failure, while Alex told the detective about Nick's pet name for his father, Hitler. Alex also revealed that Mother Tamara was an alcoholic, and that Nick hated that about her. Later interviews with his schoolmates revealed that Nick routinely joked about killing his father, And at times, he included his mother and brothers in those fantasies too. The interrogation also revealed that he had intimate knowledge of firearms, as well as easy access to the workbench where the gun had been kept. There was also the small matter of Nick denying ever speaking to his brother Greg, when two of his friends remembered him calling his brother and asking him to leave the basement door open. Nick also had the keys to his car when he denied ever entering the house, and this was where the keys were normally kept. One of his friends remembered seeing the car keys in his pocket when they went to the mall earlier that day. All of these facts combined branded Nick as the most likely suspect for the crime, although the police still lacked a strong motive or concrete evidence. Those, however, came later with Nick's confession. He broke down after hours of pushing back against the investigating detectives, hours of him trying to poke holes in the detectives' theories.
I can tell you didn't plan this. Is it because you're a father?
Yeah, he was the straw. Yeah.
But why? Was it physical?
No, it's more sort of like a last, probably so. I mean, it wasn't. It was. They were physical. I'm in Boy Scouts, right? And excuse me.
It's okay, man.
So there's this, I'm almost Eagle, I'm almost done.
You're getting life.
Right, Life Scout. And then there's this leadership weekend, camp out, whatever thing, and,
Where was it?
This was Brownsea, somewhere up in Africa, but anyways, I didn't want to go, I'm almost done, didn't think I need a leadership camp, so my attitude wasn't great on the trip.
You got pissed?
So he got pissed, and then as we're coming home, he hits me,
Was he beating on you too, mentally, or?
It was mentally, and it was like he called me at times, and that was the.
You're at Life Scout, you're at Life Scout, for God's sakes.
And so that was sort of the beginning, the beginning of it, and it's just.
How long ago was that?
That was this fall, last fall, and then
You kept it up there.
it kept going, and the little thing just seemed it always reverted back to that one thing, and then the alcohol thing happened. Then they called me taking out the car.
Oh, you got a call before?
Yeah, I got a call before.
He threatened to keep it away from you?
Right. And
But the whole time your grades are good? Everything else is?
grades were good. And last freshman year, I got a D one quarter, but then I got an A the next quarter, so I got a
You
B
made it
overall. So that
But he's
grades,
harping on the D.
right, hop on the D, and then he did occasionally hit. I wouldn't have called it huge physical beating, but I think
He's still uncalled for.
right, the emotional, I think. 'Cause the hit, when he hit me, didn't bother me. It was the constant.
Did he do it in front of your friends too?
Never the hitting, but the yelling and the anger.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. And then for my birthday, which is
Couple days.
a couple of days away, we were supposed to take friends up to Deep Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And this last weekend, he was uptight as usual. And
Did he drink or anything? Or?
no, it was never really alcohol. It was just he's overstressed, I think.
Okay.
He works. I mean, he gets up at 5 in the morning and comes home at 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
So then he sort of has Phil being nice and always climbs when he gets home. Takes it out, dinner not almost, but most nights.
Is he doing it the same to your brothers? Or just you?
Maybe, but I didn't.
No.
It didn't seem like that to me, but.
To your mother at all?
Yeah, but a little bit. But the bulk seemed to be generated towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Friday night, he was just mad. I don't even know why he was mad. And then I was giving directions how to get around Fingal's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he
Lost it?
blows out or something. It didn't hit me. He just gets really angry. And we didn't even get lost. He went 2 feet past a turn and just had to make a tight turn.
Come back.
And then you have to put the car in reverse. He got really angry. And then I went back to get the car. And I saw him sitting on the couch. The TV was on. And I knew the gun was out on the workshop bench.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
I walked up. I sat there for a half hour.
He was sleeping?
Yeah, standing over him. And then I went between putting the gun up to his head and pulling it back down and up.
Do you have a pillow up too, or?
No, just the gun. The gun was... I'm not sure if I meant to pull the trigger or if it
Just went off?
And then once that happened, I freaked out, and I thought, they'd all come down, but I don't even know if they woke up or whatever, but so I sat on the couch and they were up, and I just couldn't realize I couldn't just walk away from that. And then I shot my mom. And then
She's still sleeping?
yeah, I waited for a little bit, then I think she went back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I shot her, and I shot her.
Why the brothers, man?
I thought if no one was there to say anything, that my story would go, because I was the only one. I just got scared. I didn't want this to happen.
That's the only true emotion you're showing right now. I just gotta feel at least a little better. I need to know where the gun is, though. We can't have that out there.
It's on Shore Road. I'll explain it on the map or whatever.
You may have to take us there.
Sure, it's fine.
Is it?
Maybe it's in bushes.
You can point out to where it is?
Yeah, definitely.
He retold the story of the murder and why he'd done it. He initially started with his father, but it grew to ensnare the other family members in his desperate attempt to cover up his crime and to escape punishment. This is what is believed to have happened on that night. On February the 1st, 2008, before Nick went to see his friends, there was a minor argument between him and his father, John. John wanted Nick to ride along on a trip to the western point of Maryland the very next day, after he had cleaned the house, but the teenager refused. There was a small argument between them before John dropped Nick off at the Fingals. Nick did not return home until 1 a.m. that night. There he waited in the garage for 30 minutes, after entering through the basement door that he'd asked Gregory to leave open for him. He snuck into the living room with a 9mm pistol, a weapon he picked up from the workbench in the basement. He then pulled the trigger twice, aimed at the back of his father's head. For over 30 minutes, he stood there, paralyzed by what he'd done. He waited for somebody to come into the living room. He was certain that the 2 loud bangs would have given him away. But when no one arrived and the police didn't come knocking, Nick tried to cover up his crime. He then ended his mother in a very similar fashion as he had done his father. She was still upstairs laying in bed. He pulled the trigger twice whilst aimed at the back of her head. Even his brothers were not spared from his calculated rampage. 14-year-old Greg had been the one to open the basement door for him. He likely knew that Nick would have walked past the gun, so in his mind he had to be taken out. And as for brother Benjamin, he was just collateral damage. Determined not to get caught, he roughed up the house a little so that the police would think that their murder was caused by a home invasion. And for this to work, he must dispose of the murder weapon. He tossed it into some nearby bushes before returning to the Fingals at around 6 a.m. like nothing had ever happened. It is unclear whether he fell asleep at some point during the night, and if Alex Smith's phone call really did wake him up. After making his confession, he revealed the location of the murder weapon, and then he was officially arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder on February the 2nd, 2008 at 1:05 a.m. The trial and conviction of Nick Browning was swift and merciless. The prosecution wasted no time arguing for the maximum possible punishment for him. Despite his breakdown in front of the police detective, they painted him as a callous, calculated killer, someone attended his family because he didn't want anyone to tell him what to do. They also claimed that he simply wanted his inheritance and the life insurance money to himself. His family, including his grandfather, submitted pleas of clemency on his behalf, alleging he was maltreated physically and mentally. Eventually, the prosecution and the defense agreed on a plea deal. Nicholas pleaded guilty in January of 2009, guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 4 life terms in prison, with 2 life terms to be served consecutively. If he is released on good behaviour, Nicholas might be eligible for parole in 2031 after serving 23 years in prison. At this time, he is 31 years old. Nick does seem to have matured and says he regrets his actions profusely. Donald Charles Spirit was born in 1962 in New Jersey and was often just called Don. Not much is known about his early life, but in 1985, he met Christine Jeffers, who would become the mother of his children. They had their first child, Sarah, in 1988, and were married a year later in 1989. Then they moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and had 2 more children, Josh, born in 1991, and then Kyle, born in 1992. Don was known for having a bad temper. Members of the community referred to him as strange, unable to keep a job, and violent, especially with his wife. Domestic abuse was a regular part of Christine's relationship with Don, and often their children witnessed it. Most of Don's life was spent at odds with the law. In fact, by the time he was 51, he had spent more than 20 years of his life in and out of jail. Sadly, a cycle that his family were born into, and that perpetuated for the rest of their short lives. Dating back to the early 1990s, some of Don's felonies included battery, domestic abuse, traffic violations, felony possession of marijuana and firearms, probation violations, as well as depriving a child of food and shelter, and a hit and run while driving without a license. In 2002, in a fit of rage, Don smashed all the windows of Christine's car with a sledgehammer after threatening to end her life. When questioned by the police after the incident, Christine said she was afraid of her husband. However, she would not make a formal statement against him. Instead, Don agreed to submit himself for a mental health evaluation, and then he was diagnosed with a severe case of bipolar 1 disorder. However, he refused medication or help for the illness. This meant that he was known for having extreme, uncontrollable outbursts and issues with rage and depression. The sledgehammer incident occurred just 1 year after the death of his youngest son, Kyle. Many believed Kyle's death to be the start of what some considered the family spirit curse. Kyle was referred to as a sweet and loving young boy who loved playing outside. He really enjoyed fishing, basketball and soccer, and he dreamed of one day playing for the NFL. His mother used to call him Sweet Pumpkin Pie, and when he was just a toddler, he asked her to call him Applejacks instead, and this became his nickname from then on. In 2001, his father Don planned a week-long hunting trip for himself and Josh. Initially, Kyle was not allowed to join them because Don thought he was just too young. However, Kyle begged, adding that he wanted to do guy things and to be included. He claimed that Josh always got to do the fun stuff while he always had to stay behind. Eventually, his father gave in and brought him along, but only if Kyle promised to stay in the hunting stands and just watch. Don insisted that Kyle was not allowed to handle a gun or to go out hunting with them. On November the 8th, the family arrived at 3 Lakes Wildlife Management Area, which is close to Kenansville in Osceola County, Florida. They spent the next few days waking up at 5:30 a.m. to go hunting and were wearing the typical bright orange safety vests that they needed to. Don was carrying a .300 Browning rifle. Josh was carrying a .270 Browning rifle, and as instructed, Kyle was unarmed, walking alongside his brother and father and not partaking. On the Tuesday night, Don cooked up a large meal for him and the boys, and he planned to leave the following morning. So far, the trip had been unsuccessful, so by the time Wednesday morning rolled around, the boys begged for one more try at finding a deer. The family went out on a 2-hour hike and still no luck. It was rainy and gloomy, and at this point, Don was far past ready to go home. As they were packing up the truck, Don was rubbing oil onto the barrel of the rifle. He apparently muttered something like, "There's rust on the barrel," prompting Kyle to lean forward to see what he was saying. And then Don accidentally hit the trigger and the gun went off. Kyle was hit point blank in the head. This was in front of brother Josh. In shock, Don frantically tried to call 911, but there was no signal. He put Kyle in a truck and then drove back off the campsite to find help. A man named Mike Evans witnessed Don speeding and pulled over to the side of the trail. Once he saw what had taken place, he claimed that it was clear that Kyle was fatally injured. His life had barely started. Mike Evans stated that the incident was the most horrifying thing he had ever seen. En route to the campsite, Don eventually got through to Christine, and she contacted the sheriff's department, as did several of the hunters at the campsite, to realize what was going on. Witnesses say that Don was lying over his son's body, screaming, and several of the hunters were afraid that he may end his own time on this earth, too. They tried to usher Don away from his son, but he was inconsolable. Others kept their attention on Josh, the son and brother who had witnessed this gruesome event. They tried to take care of him. One hunter told Josh that he would have to be strong now. Police arrived on the scene, and while many believe that the event truly was an accident, it was discovered that Don had previous felonies, and therefore was not allowed to handle a firearm. As a result, Don was sentenced to 3 years in prison for a felony possession of a firearm. After the incident, Christine opened up to reporters, explaining that the family was not coping and that she was particularly worried about Don. Sadly, the family were unable to pay for Carl's funeral expenses, leaving them in a difficult financial position. Still, Christine insisted that Kyle be remembered as the sweet boy who bought his brother a bike after saving up his allowance for months on end. He was her Applejack. During the time that Don was in prison, the family moved to a mobile home in Bell, Florida, and their financial struggles only worsened. Bell is a small agricultural community. At the time, its population was just over 200 people, and the small community is known for being close-knit, even though the majority is living below the poverty line, and things weren't easy. Christine was concerned that Don may end his own time on this earth whilst locked up, especially whilst dealing with the grief of Kyle's death and missing several family milestones. Josh turned 13 and their first grandchild was born too. Sarah, the oldest of Don and Christine's children, became pregnant at 17 and was working at a fast food restaurant and a local grocery store. Just a year before Don would be released from prison, Christine filed for divorce after 20 years of marriage. After he was released, however, Don gained sole possession of the mobile home, and his daughter Sarah, now 19, already had 2 children with a third on the way. For the most part, his remaining children and his new grandchildren all lived with him in the mobile home. The father of Sarah's children, Edward, was also known for being in trouble with the law, and he was in and out of the family's lives. This meant that Sarah found herself as a single young mother, with only her father to depend on, especially since her mother, Christine, had become distant since her divorce from Don. By the time Sarah's third child was born, the family had very little food, and Sarah began running into welfare issues, having the Florida Department of Children and Families, or the DCF, called on her multiple times. According to neighbours, one of her children was found alone on the street, and he had bruises and bite marks, and he was holding a sharp kitchen implement. Another, younger than 4 at the time, had an inexplicable broken leg. The family would spend many years chaotically interacting with the DCF, often being reported on by neighbours who claimed that Sarah would leave her children in crack dens, and many of the write-ups reported substance and domestic abuse, medical neglect, and inadequate supervision. However, the DCF continually stated that the children were not in danger. It was not until 2007 that the children were removed from Sarah's custody, which sent her and her brother Josh into a downward spiral of substance misuse and crimes such as larceny. However, this removal was only temporary, and after a series of promises of getting clean and of participating in community welfare programs, the children were placed back in Sarah's custody. By 2008, she gave birth to her 4th child with her new partner, Jamie. At this time, they were living with Don again, and this is when Sarah started reporting Don to the police for physical abuse. On August 27, 2008, Sarah called the police claiming that Don had shoved her up against the fridge and that he had aggressively grabbed her face on either side. When the police arrived, Sarah had red marks across her face, but ultimately she chose not to press charges. This may have been because Sarah's new partner Jamie was also having trouble with the law, and Don was her only support otherwise. By 2011, Sarah's substance addiction had worsened, and the next 3 years marked a steep downward spiral for the family. They were now constantly embroiled in cases with the DCF, along with law enforcement, and by then, Sarah was also being reported by school teachers who stated the children came to school hungry, dirty, and were often injured. One of Sarah's children, Caleb, had cut his foot open by mistake and it became infected after Sarah cleaned the injury with bleach and then wrapped it up in tape. All the while, Don's mental state was worsening too, and his frustrations with his daughter and her children grew. Neighbours stated that he was often seen yelling violently, and that the family were always having fights. It's unclear whether he saw the children as a burden, but he definitely had a strained relationship with his daughter and didn't agree with how she lived her life. Sarah had failed the Better Parent welfare program and now discovered that she was pregnant with her 6th child. As a result of failing the program, the state was less inclined to help her financially, and therefore it was around this time that Sarah, with the guidance of a family friend, Colleen Stewart, turned to escorting, a decision which then raged Don. On September the 18th, 2014, at around 3:30 p.m, one of Don's neighbours claimed to have seen Don angrily pacing up and down the street, looking as though he were looking for or waiting for someone. The neighbour says he remembers it distinctly, as he only ever saw Don riding his bike and never normally walking. While we don't know exactly what happened during this time, we do know that Don made this 911 call at around 4 p.m.
Gilchrist County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I just shot my daughter and shot all my grandkids, and I'll be sitting on my step, and when you get here, I'm going to shoot myself.
What is the address that you're at, sir?
2550 Northwest, 25 Terrace, Don Spirit. Every one of them are dead.
You said your name is Don Spirit?
Yep.
All right, Don, what kind of gun do you have?
It doesn't matter what kind of gun I got. They're all dead, and then when you get here, I'll shoot myself, and then you figure out what kind of gun it is.
How long ago this happened, Don?
I don't want to hear it, man. I'm done with everything. Just bring the motherfuckers out here, that's all. You got all the kids are dead in the house.
Okay, how many people? Okay, how many people?
6 kids, 1 adult.
6 kids and 1 adult?
Yeah. One of them is a baby.
All right, Don. Is there any way you can stay on the phone with me till I get somebody there to help you?
What's that?
Can I have you stay on the phone with me?
No, not that. I'm waiting for them to get here. When they get here, I'm going to shoot myself on my back step. All I'm doing is waiting for them.
So you're sitting on your back steps?
Yep.
Okay, Don.
Officer Adderhold, who knew Don, arrived at the scene. He found him quickly pacing at the back of the mobile home. Adderhold identified himself to Don and instructed him to put up his hands. Don complied and stated that he was not going to hurt him. He was, however, cursing, and he appeared out of it. Don yelled that Colleen Stewart had turned Sarah into a whore. He went on to state, "I am tired of them all, and I've taken care of it today." Don continued to yell that he killed them all and Sarah's dead too. Eventually, more police show up, and Don became less responsive to their questions. Finally, Don used a .45 caliber handgun to end his own time on this earth. But that was nothing compared to what police would find next. When officers entered the mobile home, they found the remains of all 6 of Sarah's children, and this included her youngest, an 11-week-old baby girl. Sarah too was discovered under a tarp, no longer alive. It appears that she was running away when the trigger was pulled. She was just 28 years old. Before the headlines, before the courtroom breakdowns and conflicting confessions, Anthony Totes was considered a model family man, a licensed physical therapist, a youth soccer coach, and a husband to Megan, his college sweetheart, as well as a father of 3 bright, musically gifted kids. In 2017, the Totes left their longtime home in Connecticut for a new start in Celebration, Florida, a community originally designed by the Walt Disney Company itself. The streets were lined with pastel houses and manicured lawns. It was the kind of place that people called storybook perfect. They rented a large home and bought a condo nearby. Megan homeschooled their kids, Alec 13, a budding pianist, Tyler 11, a bookworm, and Zoe 4, an energetic, curious little girl who everyone called a princess. They also had a family dog called Breezy. The family went on holidays. They posted smiling photos, and everything looked idyllic from the outside. Anthony still commuted back to Connecticut during the week in order to run his physical therapy practice. On weekends, he coached soccer, and he led an active role in his kids' lives. But that double life, commuter dad, long-distance business owner, Disney neighbor, was starting to crack. Debt was mounting. Anthony had taken out multiple high-interest loans, totaling more than a horrendous $200,000, an amount that actually makes me feel physically sick. I mean, can you even begin to imagine that? Horrible. Anthony was understandably being sued by lenders, and in April of 2019, federal investigators opened a case against him for fraud. He was accused of billing insurance companies for treatments that he never actually performed, what are called ghost appointments. These are fake sessions, but he would get real payouts for them. Still, he kept this information from wife Megan. He kept the family life running like nothing at all had changed. However, that year they even stayed in Florida for the holidays, skipping their usual return north. By November, his clinic had been raided. By December, their rental home was under threat of eviction. But instead of just telling the truth, Anthony said that they were going to go on another vacation, and while they were away, they would be unreachable. But then they all but vanished. At first, no one panicked. Megan's relatives got text messages saying that the family had come down with the flu, that they were still recovering, and that they needed their rest. Some friends received vague holiday updates, but something about them didn't feel quite right. The days dragged on. Christmas came and went, and no one answered their phones, nor did they call back. And then came the eviction notice. It was pinned to their door at 202 Reserve Place. Neighbours even texted Megan about it. She replied with a short message, "We're fine, thanks." But this didn't sound like Megan. With suspicions raising, on December the 29th, police did a welfare check. Nobody answered the door, and legally they couldn't force entry. But behind the scenes, things were escalating.
A federal affidavit reveals Totes was being investigated by the FBI after they report he engaged in a healthcare fraud scheme in which he allegedly submitted fake claims to Connecticut's Medicaid program from 2015 to 2019. In the affidavit, when questioned as to the motivation for committing the fraud, authorities say Totes blamed loans and living above his means. And according to his Florida landlord, Totes owed over $6,000 in back rent and was being evicted. After not hearing from Totes for some time, federal agents reached out to a Connecticut relative who said she too was having a hard time contacting the family, according to the affidavit. She then reached out to the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. They did a well-being check at their home, but say they didn't find anything suspicious.
Federal agents from the Department of Health and Human Services were busy still building their fraud case against Anthony Totes. They now had a warrant for his arrest. On January the 13th, 2020, but this time with deputies, from the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. Mail was now stacked high on the porch. The same Christmas decorations still hung untouched. This time, the front door creaked open. Anthony stood there, swaying slightly. He looked pale. He said the kids were on a sleepover, said that Megan was upstairs, sleeping. He even turned his head and called her name, as if he was expecting her to answer, but she didn't. Deputies entered the house. There was an immediate, overwhelming stench of death. It wouldn't take long to discover the source, and I'll warn you, the truth is really very disturbing. In the master bedroom, they found 5 bodies. Megan, Alec, Tyler, Zoe, and the family dog, Breezy. They were wrapped in blankets, positioned together. They were far gone enough that it was hard to even tell who was who. Zoe had been hidden beneath her mother's legs. A crucifix was found clutched in one hand. Bottles of Benadryl were strewn across the floor.
Members of the community still shocked at everything that has unfolded.
I ran into Tony now and then, but this is just a total shock.
It's shocking. It's sad. It's awful.
Cho is now facing 4 counts of murder and 1 count of animal cruelty and is being held in police custody without bond. Live in Colchester tonight, Zania Maldonado, Fox 61 News.
Anthony Totes was immediately taken into custody. He too had Benadryl in his own system, but it wasn't enough to end him. And when he began to speak, what he told investigators was worse than anything they could have imagined. Here is some of that real body cam footage of the events I just described.
What's up? Oh, you good? You got any weapons on you? Alright. Any needles? No knives, nothing like that? No. Okay. What's your wife's name?
Megan.
Has anyone heard her talk?
Yeah.
Megan?
Megan.
Alright, come on down, buddy. Come. Alright? Take control.
Yep.
Alright, just have a seat. You good? I got you. Just have a seat.
Megan.
Face forward for me, alright? Put your hands forward too, alright?
Megan?
One 24-11. You can be 51 over here. I believe we got 2 single 7.
Alright, okay. You want me to get a chair for you to sit down in? What's that?
Hey, can you run out there and grab some gloves?
We got it.
We still can't find the daughter.
What?
Where's Zoe?
I haven't seen her. She's on the dude. Oh, no, I didn't see her. I was sleeping. She was in here. I haven't seen anything. You think I'll have to check the garage.
When investigators sat down with Anthony Totes after his arrest, he didn't act like a man who had just lost his family. He rambled, he mumbled, he described a spiritual mission. He claimed that Megan had long suffered from chronic Lyme disease, that she'd grown depressed after a miscarriage, and that she'd recently become obsessed with the idea of reincarnation and the idea of an impending apocalypse. According to Anthony, Megan believed their family had bad karma and that they needed to burn it away by passing altogether. He said she convinced him that if they did, that their souls would ascend to a better life if they just left the physical world behind. Anthony told detectives that they sat down and talked it through with their children. He claims that the children agreed, that they said, "We want to die with you." The plan was to use Benadryl to sedate the children peacefully and then carry out the rest of the plan using sharp implements. Anthony said that Zoe was first. He gave her the medicine and lay down next to her for hours. Eventually, he placed a pillow over her face, and then came Tyler and Alec. He said he sedated them too, then suffocated them, and then used the sharp implement on them. When it came time for Megan, Anthony claimed that she tried to jab herself in the abdomen, that she drank more Benadryl, but it didn't have the desired effect. He said that she begged him to finish it for her, so that's exactly what he did. Afterwards, he says he arranged the bodies in the bedroom. He placed a crucifix in their hands, and then, according to him, he wanted to end his own time too. So he too took Benadryl, but not enough. He said that he couldn't bring himself to use the sharp implement on himself. He claims he passed out, woke up again, and then just wandered around the house. He never called for help, but he did leave the house to buy alcohol. He also checked the mail, and he even went out for fast food once or twice. And he says before he knew it, 3 weeks had passed, and all that time he continued living in the house with his family. He simply covered them in blankets and kept the doors shut. To the outside world, they were simply away on vacation. Everyone was still recovering from the flu. However, Anthony Totes claimed that they were in fact on a path to rebirth. 2 days after his arrest, Anthony Totes' story started to change though. The calm conviction he'd once shown when describing the pact now began to crack. Now he said that he hadn't been involved at all. He claimed that when he returned home, he found that the children were already gone, that Megan had poisoned them, spiking their pudding with Benadryl, and then using the sharp implement. He said she'd then done the same to herself. He told detectives he ran to the bathroom and then vomited when he saw what she'd done, that he was too weak to do anything else. However, investigators just weren't buying it. His initial confession had been graphic and specific, and it was consistent with the physical evidence found at the scene. He knew the order in which everyone had passed, and he also knew that Megan hadn't managed to jab herself fatally, that her wounds were only really superficial. So, self-inflicted or not, they wouldn't have been enough to end her time. Prosecutors also pointed to his behaviour in the days and weeks that followed. He'd used his family's phones to send fake text messages. He'd told relatives that they were all sick, that they were going on holiday, and that they wouldn't be in contact. He had taken deliberate steps to maintain the illusion of normalcy long after the family were gone. When asked why he didn't call 911, even if it was Megan that had done it, he had no real answer. He talked about being confused, about being overwhelmed and emotionally shattered. During this time, he also continued using money that he'd gained from fraudulent insurance claims, and he had done nothing to preserve the dignity of the people that he claimed to love. At one point, he suggested that maybe he had blacked out and done it, but then he retracted that statement. Then he just blamed Megan again. In jail, he wrote a 27-page letter to his estranged father, Robert Totes. And we're going to have to take a short detour here, because Robert and Anthony may actually have a few things in common. The real story of Anthony Totes doesn't begin in Celebration, Florida. It begins in Pennsylvania in 1980. Back then, Anthony was just 4 years old. That year, his father, Robert Totes, was arrested for hiring a former student to end Anthony's mother, Loretta. Robert was a high school wrestling coach and a special education teacher. He paid a 19-year-old with learning difficulties just $800 to pull the trigger on Loretta while she slept. His motive for doing this? He wanted to marry his mistress. Anthony, along with his younger sister, were in the house that night. Robert would later say that his son saw the guy, saw the gun, saw everything. Miraculously, Loretta actually survived the attack. However, she lost her left eye. She eventually remarried and rebuilt her life. Robert Totes was convicted, but he served just 5 years in prison. 2 questions: what and how? After his release, he and Anthony didn't speak for years, but by 2020, in the wake of Anthony's own arrest, they had reconnected, and Robert defended his son. He said that the case didn't make a whole lot of sense, that Anthony had been mistreated by the justice system, that his confessions shouldn't have been used against him, but to prosecutors, the parallels were chilling. 2 generations, 2 fathers, 2 families destroyed from the inside out.
Investigators claim after his arrest, Anthony Totes confessed to killing his wife, 3 children, and the family dog. But now Totes is telling a different story. Jail phone calls obtained by WESH 2 News record Totes telling his sister he was not present when his family was killed. He also implies his wife, Megan, was the real killer and that it wasn't her first attempt.
Didn't stop this because I wasn't there.
I know, I know, and I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, this is awesome.
Attempts, just so you know.
Huh?
Multiple attempts in the last 7.
Totes made similar claims in a letter to his father in June. He said his wife was the one who drugged the children, stabbed and suffocated them, and then stabbed herself. In the phone call with his sister, Totes claims his family meant everything to him.
I'm still madly in love with her. I'm still madly in love with the kids.
Totes is being held at the Osceola County Jail. Amanda Dukes reporting, WESH 2 News.
Anthony Totes may have become a father himself, but the legacy he carried was already soaked in betrayal, secrets, and a terrible familial violence. In the letter to Father Robert, Anthony laid out yet another version of events. He said that Megan ended the kid's time while he slept, and she then passed by her own hand. He told his father to keep it confidential. However, I'm not making any accusations, but somehow this letter to Robert was leaked to the press. So prosecutors now had at least 3 different stories from Anthony Totes, but only one of them matched the crime scene. When the trial began in April of 2022, the media dubbed him the Disney Dad, the man who had posed with his kids in front of fairy tale castles, and then lived in their family home for weeks while their bodies decomposed upstairs. Anthony Totes pleaded not guilty on all charges. He insisted, again, that Megan was responsible, that he hadn't harmed anyone. On the stand, he cried often. He spoke about Megan's chronic Lyme disease, about her depression, about her spiritual beliefs, telling the court that his wife's fixation on reincarnation came about after a miscarriage. He said that she had ended the family's time on this earth in a moment of despair. He claims that he lied in his original confession in order to protect his wife's legacy. I was covering for my wife, he told the jury. I didn't want anyone to actually think badly of her, that his confessions had been coerced, that he was in a Benadrylled up, disorientated state. They pointed out that the bodies were too decomposed to determine the exact causes of their demise. They said that the state couldn't prove beyond reasonable doubt that he was the one responsible. However, the prosecution was prepared. They played Anthony's videotaped confession in full. He had confessed twice, once just after his arrest, and again 2 days later. In those recordings, his voice was steady. It was clear and emotionless. He described how he'd given each child the Benadryl, how he'd gone from room to room, and done the deed. He said that Megan had begged him to help her after her own failed attempt on herself, so he did.
I loved my wife. I loved my children. I was not there the night my children died. The kids and my wife woke up. The Friday before all this happened, we got in a disagreement, and I begged her to go get help because she screamed at my son because he didn't do the pot, clean the pot. He let it soak per my instructions. This has been a progressive history since the miscarriage. Her anger issues, her frustration issues, and it was directed mostly at me. And I took it. It's okay, because she held me partly responsible for getting her sick initially because I insisted she went to the hospital. I told her after she finally decided to schedule a doctor's appointment on the Thursday after Thanksgiving, she canceled it. I found that out the night before. When she screamed at Tyler, the Friday the 13th, I told her that she has to the end of the month to see a doctor because she went to the alternative and spiritual and all this other route. Or I would get her aunt and my sister involved. After that, she once again held it quiet in public. Okay? She was very good at keeping it from the public.
Prosecutors asked, if Megan really did all of this, why didn't Anthony call the police? Why lie to everyone for weeks? Why conceal the bodies? And why send the fake messages? The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. They came back with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. Guilty of animal cruelty. And finally, they rejected every version of his story. On sentencing day, the courtroom was silent. Megan's aunt Cynthia spoke through tears. She described Megan as having a giving heart. She said that Alec had wanted to play violin. Tyler dreamed of learning folk guitar. She called Zoe a princess. When Anthony stood to speak, he shook his head. I loved my wife. I loved my kids, he said. They were first and foremost in my life. I did not do this. However, Judge Keith Carston wasn't swayed. You, Anthony Totes, he said slowly, are the destroyer of worlds. He handed down 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He also added 1 more year for Breezy, the family dog. Anthony showed no real reaction. The court recessed. And with that, the man who once promised to build a magical future inside Disney's ideal town was now serving the rest of his life in a prison hundreds of miles away. Not quite the dream that he was selling. In 2021, Rodney and Lisa Shippy bought their family home on West Roanoke Street. It was modest, 1 story, plain sidings, and a backyard that was just big enough. Lisa worked in the school system, and Rodney had a steady job too. And despite the challenges of raising 2 kids, one of whom had significant needs, neighbours say that they seemed like a loving and normal family. Alyssa was in her late teens, and Logan was just starting to communicate non-verbally by using gestures and videos. He had a YouTube account where he posted clips of garage doors opening and closing, and this was just his favourite thing in the world. It's kind of irrelevant now, but when I find information, I'd like to share it. Rodney also had a YouTube account with just 1 video on it. It was uploaded on January the 9th, 2015, and it was from a Katy Perry concert. I didn't really have him down as a Katy Perry fan, but there we go. I want to talk more about Lisa and the dynamics within their Shippy house, to try and understand the conditions that could have combined and then led her to do what she eventually did. It is kind of tough because there's no clear first-hand record, and there's no note from Lisa, but there are some very possible factors at play. Those closest to Lisa have said that she'd been struggling with depression for a long time, and raising Logan was not easy. And believe me, I am in no way laying on any level, not a single ounce of responsibility at Logan's door, but I have compiled a little research of what a situation like this could be like. Raising a non-verbal autistic child can present profound challenges. According to the NHS, children on the autism spectrum often use limited or no speech and rely on alternate communications, things like gestures or speaking devices. And we know that Logan fits this diagnosis. Without adequate support, the child may experience severe anxiety and meltdowns, often seen when overwhelmed, a situation that isn't easy for the caregivers. They're often bound to consistent routines and keeping certain sensory conditions. And in this instance, in this home, Lisa was struggling. And if Lisa was struggling, things could snowball very quickly. Logan was nonverbal, he had autism, and he needed near constant supervision, a situation that would be tough for anyone, even if they were in perfect mental health. And Lisa did 100% totally adore him, but it was still exhausting. This video from March 2022, taken from Logan's YouTube channel, I believe features Lisa having a discussion with another woman about how they were handling Logan's non-verbal communication. It sounds like they were really trying to help him out.
Well, maybe the psychologist or whoever he's seeing, the therapist, said, let him reply to some of your things. Don't.
Yeah. And Ronnie took the initiative yesterday, well, because I told him to, but he took the initiative to text him first, and then everything after that was Ronnie.
And also thrown into the mix was the rest of the family too. Alyssa was nearing adulthood, and she was trying to carve out her own life while still helping out at home. But perhaps Lisa was receiving less help than normal from Alyssa, but again, this is nobody's fault. We can just imagine that it was a tough situation. Something else I'm sure didn't help was the fact that Rodney worked long hours. Sometimes he would leave Lisa to juggle both kids on her own. And let's not rule out just how difficult a teenager can sometimes be. And so, behind closed doors, those pressures mounted. And in August of 2022, something sadly broke. Lisa ended her own time on this earth, in the very same home where Logan had played with toys on the carpet, where Alyssa had decorated her room with posters and fairy lights, where husband Rodney had kissed his wife goodbye for the last time and didn't even know it. Lisa's demise was the first major blow to the family, but what followed was a slow descent that nobody outside of the home could have fully seen. Rodney didn't just collapse overnight. To co-workers and neighbours, he still seemed functional. But family members did notice a change. He stopped answering text messages. He began giving vague updates about how the kids were doing. And when he did talk to people, his tone was now flat. Alyssa had been taking online classes, but she withdrew. She told a few people that she just needed a break. No one knew that break would stretch into an ongoing silence. And Logan, once visible in the yard, or going on walks with his father, was now almost never seen at all. The house grew quiet, almost too quiet, and the grief, rather than fading, it seemed to harden. Rodney began pushing everyone away, perhaps trying to protect what little he had left. But isolation made nobody in that house safer. It only made what would come next invisible. Things only got worse. 5 months after Lisa's end, another tragedy struck the family. This time it was Lisa's mother, Diane Carpenter. In January of 2023, police were called to a home in South Broken Arrow after someone reported a disturbance. When they arrived, they found Diane in the kitchen. She was no longer breathing after a sharp force attack. Her husband, Kenny, had barricaded himself inside the home. He refused to come out. Officers tried to negotiate, and this standoff lasted for 4 hours. However, it ended with a single shot. Kenny now ended his own time on this earth as well. On January the 21st, 2023, Alyssa posted to Facebook, "I miss you, Grandma." Now within the space of just 5 months, Alyssa and Logan had lost both their mother and their grandparents. Rodney had lost his wife and his in-laws. The psychological fallout was heavy, and now all of the weight of the family fell on his shoulders. Rodney reportedly never spoke of Diane's death again. Family say he distanced himself even further. He made no memorial posts. He wrote no obituary. It was as if the family was disappearing one person at a time. They were disappearing from the outside world and also from memory as they further closed off. By the spring of 2023, Rodney and the kids were still in the West Roanoke home. However, the lights were now mostly off. The windows pretty much stayed closed, and whatever was happening inside, nobody would know until it was far too late. Logan Shippy wasn't a boy that many people knew by name, but if you lived on West Roanoke, you would know of him. He was the kid who loved to visit neighbours' driveways, just to watch their garage doors go up and down. He didn't talk. He didn't knock at people's doors. He just stood there mesmerised. Some people found it odd at first, but once they realised who he was, most welcomed him in. One neighbour even installed a smart opener so that Logan could trigger it whenever he wanted with a phone app. He'd smile when the doors moved. He'd film it and then watch it again and again. He even had a small YouTube channel, and it mostly featured videos of garage doors and some silent tours of places that he found interesting. But sometime after his mother passed, those videos slowed down. But then in early 2025, we got some new glimpses into the Shippy household. This video from January 2025 features both Rodney and Logan as they watch a neighbour's garage door in motion. It sounds like Rodney, at this time, was still maintaining a level of care for Logan as he mentions going home to eat.
You have a good night, Ben.
I will. Go put down.
Yeah, he's gonna go down.
Logan, come on in if you want to.
No, he's gonna go inside. He's gotta go eat too. Hi. push the button.
Push the button.
Thank you, buddy. Yes. You too.
Then in March of 2025, it was a walkthrough of the inside of his home. It was only a short video, a little shaky. It was filmed from his point of view, but what it showed alarmed his relatives. There were piles of trash, flooring seemingly torn up in parts, animals weaving throughout the home. It was clear that although the house still stood, the home had now collapsed, and nobody had been inside to see it, until that is, Logan quietly filmed it for the world. Alyssa was now 20 years old. She was bright and funny, and she was online a lot like most people her age. She loved anime and had dreams of working with animals. She last updated her Facebook profile picture on August the 8th, 2023. Her online activity slowly tailed off. She used to text with her cousin Patty every few days, but sometime in the fall of 2024, she stopped replying. Patty assumed that she was just busy, or maybe even depressed. After all, the family had been through so much, but as the months passed, concern began to grow. When people went to Rodney for answers about his daughter, he would give inconsistent answers. To one person, he said that Alyssa had moved in with some friends, and to another he said that she was dealing with health issues. One neighbour was even told that she had cancer, and Rodney even accepted money to help with her treatment for that cancer. But no one had seen Alyssa, nobody either online or in real life. Notably, Alyssa also didn't show up in any of Logan's candid videos. By March of 2025, nearly 5 months had passed without a confirmed sighting. Patty tried to reach out again, but again she got no answer. She asked some local friends to check in on the home, but nobody could get through. It was then that someone sent her Logan's most recent video. This was that video showing the interior of the home. Patty was now firmly convinced that something was very wrong.
Yeah. I could be the ball, Lord. What happened to doing? Oh my God. What you been doing? Dryer. What are you doing? Or washing? It's going out as well. He's had doors. He washes. Go back to the backyard. The story. Then go over there. Let's go into the back door. Okay.
I'm gonna show you something. No, I'm gonna show you something right now.
We
Grab my laptop.
will have the bathroom. Get boss room. We have fan. This is slippery. This beginning. I have to visit.
Okay, here we go.
This is this the door I have pantry and you look that sink, the water. We'll go over there and have pantry more, the hammer. And then I have bedroom. Let's go to A. You gotta go to the bedroom.
I knew you would. Oh, take a picture. Okay, hold on, buddy. Let me take a picture
bedroom
real quick. Okay, I got
it. Bedroom. You see? You will go to the closet. We have a bedroom. This go to the closet. Closet here. Take a money.
A missing persons report was finally filed in May, and not because anyone knew anything had actually happened. It was mainly because Rodney's stories were no longer being believed. Broken Arrow police attended the home on a welfare check. However, Rodney didn't answer the door. He just said that Alyssa was resting and that they didn't need anything. So instead, officers moved to get a search warrant. Logan's final upload to YouTube was on the 25th of May 2025. It's honestly just a heartbreaking watch. From my point of view, what we're seeing is a 10-year-old Logan living in squalor and trying to find methods of stimulation. The whole video is over 20 minutes long. It's almost all shot from Logan's point of view. He plays with some toys, he has some screen time, he pushes some buttons. There's a whole load of sound effects, some crude animations, and at one point he films Father Rodney. It appears Rodney is reading or typing on an iPad whilst he's sat at the kitchen table. Logan tries to get his attention, but Rodney dismisses him.
Daddy. I hate the dad. I hope you see the good stuff. It's kind of fun.
What stands out to me about that is in the earlier videos, we hear Lisa trying to figure out how to get Logan to communicate better, and in this instance he actually uses his voice, but Rodney doesn't want to listen. I really hated watching this, and to be honest, I wish I hadn't tried so hard to find Logan's channel. And I know this is a spoiler, but what a god-awful way to spend your last days on Earth. The next update in this story is just 3 days later. And then on May the 28th, 2025, they entered the home with legal authority. What they found inside, Rodney, Logan, the family dog, was already horrifying. But it was what they missed at first, a hidden body in the corner of a dark, trash-strewn room that turned this from a crime into something far worse. This was a long silent cry for help that nobody heard in time. It seems that Rodney had many secrets, and in January of 2025, US Bank filed a foreclosure notice against Rodney for $135,000 in unpaid principal. Court documents show that he had until June to respond, but Rodney never filed, he never showed up, He never even called to try and sort it out. Nobody had any idea that the home was in foreclosure, because Rodney hadn't told anyone. From the outside, the yard did look neglected, but nobody could have guessed just how far south everything could have gone. The mailbox now filled up. Deliveries sat untouched on a doorstep, and inside, a final act had already unfolded. There was no witnesses, no outreach, and nobody left to intervene. By the time police showed up for the second time, it was already over. Officers were not prepared for what they saw. Inside the home, there was no running water, there were no clean surfaces. Trash and broken furniture was now piled in nearly every room. The floors were sticky, and the air was thick with the smell of rot and pet waste. Much of the house sat in near total darkness. Investigators found Rodney first. He met his end at his own hands. He was the one that pulled the trigger, and horrifically, next to him was Logan. He was also gone. Their dog nearby was also deceased. At this time, Alyssa was still missing. It wasn't until officers returned with more lights and equipment that they realized something else was wrong. There were too many indicators, too many belongings, too much evidence that someone else had been living in the home. And then eventually, they saw it, tucked behind a collapsed pile of furniture and trash. In a dank room with no working electricity, they found a third body. It was a young woman. She was too degraded for immediate ID. However, the family already knew this was Alyssa.
Breaking news. It all started with a call from someone out of state worried about the whereabouts of their family member, Alyssa Shippy. When police showed up to this house in Broken Arrow serving a warrant, they walked in and found tragedy.
Our hearts go out to the family and friends and neighbors of the people involved in this incident this afternoon. Anytime we lose somebody in our community, it's a tragedy.
Investigators initially found 2 people and a dog all dead, calling it an apparent murder-suicide. One man who apparently shot himself, a juvenile male and a dog. Officers would not say what caused the death of the others. Later on in the investigation, they also found the dead body of a woman. They would not reveal her identity nor her cause of death. We're told investigators plan to be on scene for several more hours. Details are limited this early in the investigation, but 2 News will work tirelessly to get more. In Broken Arrow, Brody Myers, 2 News, Oklahoma.
The medical examiner would later confirm the identity. By this stage, the story had already reached the public. The home where Lisa had met her end in 2022 now held 3 more bodies. The last 3 Shippies, all gone, and all within the same 4 walls. So just to hammer this home and just to be crystal clear, the majority or possibly all of the videos that Logan recorded within the home, he did so whilst his sister was laying, decomposing in the next room. When we saw Rodney sitting at the kitchen table, he knew where Alyssa was and what state she was in. Truly, truly unthinkable.
But I spoke with family member Patty Williams, who says it is Alyssa.
This whole story is just such a tragedy on so many multiple levels.
Yeah, it's horrible. He seemed to be holding it together as best as he could, months after she passed. But then he just started to estrange himself from everybody.
Neighbors who describe Logan as autistic and nonverbal say they often saw him play outside. He loved meeting with them. But no one had seen Alyssa since at least December. Patty hadn't talked to any of them either.
It's not abnormal for Ronnie to kind of distance himself from everybody. So when I didn't hear from them, I didn't think anything of it because he's done this before.
Patty and several of the neighbors tell me Logan loved garage doors. In fact, he would be out here a lot asking the neighbors if they would open and close it for them, and they did oblige. He also took a lot of YouTube videos. It was, in fact, one of his YouTube videos that alerted family to what was going on inside.
Not suitable for a child. There was no running water. There was trash in the house. The house looked like a completely different house.
Patty would later learn Rodney had been telling various stories, including telling neighbors that Alyssa had cancer.
And they would send money to help. Alyssa did not have cancer.
Patty now just wants the community to see and remember their faces of lives lost too soon.
Logan was so smart, eager to learn. Everybody that met him loved him, so he was everybody's Logan. Alyssa was such a bright person in the world, and she had such a beautiful life ahead of her, and I just feel like their lives were just stolen from them.
We don't know exactly what happened to Alyssa, and in a way I think she has the darkest story here. The Broken Arrow Police Department stated that a medical examiner would determine the official reason that her time came to an end, but as of now, no official ruling or autopsy results have been publicly released. What is strongly implied, however, based on the state of decomposition, the lack of visible trauma reports, and the home's unsanitary, abandoned-like condition, is that Alyssa must have passed months earlier, possibly from neglect, from untreated illness, possibly starvation, or maybe other non-violent causes, though again this is unconfirmed. Relatives, including Patty Williams, already believed that Rodney had been lying about Alyssa's whereabouts and condition, and we know that at one point he claimed that she had cancer, so maybe she was already ill, or maybe she was already gone. But either way, these deceptions suggest that Rodney concealed her passing for some time, either out of denial, out of mental anguish, or to avoid intervention. Hopefully in time we will get the answers, but there is a chance that the remains were already too degraded. We don't know exactly when Rodney made his decision. There were no notes found. There were no text messages sent. There were no final phone calls. But at some point, the father who had once tried to hold his family together chose to be the one to put an end to his entire family's story. Hannah Clark wanted to be a mother from a very young age. This began with the love and care for her younger siblings, and then as she grew, all she wanted was to be a successful mother. She was full of energy and grew up spending her days being as active as possible. She was described as having the brightest, most constant smile every single day. Hannah was also extremely competitive in her passions. She worked as hard as she could to be a successful CrossFit competitor. She won first place in the Australian competition and fourth place in the international one. Hannah worked tirelessly towards her goals and didn't let anyone stop her. But alongside that was her soft, loving and nurturing side that thrived just as well. She continued her love of everything energetic into her marriage, with her husband and as a mother to her 3 children. 6-year-old Aaliyah was bright and strong just like her mother, having a strong affinity for sports. 4-year-old Leanna was the fashionista of the family, changing her outfits multiple times per day. And 3-year-old Trey was looking to be a football prodigy, with Hannah saying he was better at football than people twice his age. Hannah's children were truly her reason for living. All she really wanted was for them to have the best life possible. The family resided in Brisbane, one of the biggest cities in Australia. Culture in Brisbane is booming, with its main attractions being art galleries, museums and the Botanic Gardens. It was a great place for a family like Hannah's. Hannah Clark had got married to Rowan Baxter in 2009 when she was 21 and he was 32. Rowan was someone that shared the same passions towards fitness as she did. He was a rigorous personal trainer and passionate towards rugby. He actually used to play professionally for the New Zealand Warriors. He and Hannah bonded over their mutual love for the adrenaline that exercise provided and had a healthy competition between them at first. Rowan had won over her family when they were first together, despite their initial reservations. However, things quickly turned around and went downhill quickly. As their marriage continued, Hannah's mother would witness Rowan become increasingly more controlling. Friends of his would report his ruthless style of training, working his clients to the point of vomiting. and this type of mentality quickly carried over into his relationship with Hannah. Hannah was no longer allowed to wear shorts to the gym, and she had to stop wearing pink since her husband thought it was a little girl's colour. In addition to his controlling nature, Rowan also had very specific views on what a marriage should look like. In his mind, women were to be two things for their husbands: a housekeeper and a prostitute. As their marriage progressed over the years, Hannah was suffering more and more, but she would constantly deny that she was a victim of domestic maltreatment. However, Rowan called Hannah a fat pig, which, as you can see, couldn't be further from the truth. And I feel like I should just add this quickly. That shouldn't really be said about anyone else either. Rowan lacked any type of empathy towards his wife, responding to both her physical and emotional pain with the simple phrase, "toughen up." He tore her down in every sense of the word, calling her disgusting and pointing out the fat on her stomach when she got dressed for work in the mornings. Hannah's husband was jealous of her successes in athletics and as a trainer, not being able to live with the fact that she was better than him at his own passions. Their marriage dragged on for 10 years, as Hannah was broken down by Rowan's behaviour, but she stayed married to him for the sake of her children. It even got to the point where people knew that Rowan was cheating on Hannah. His cousin recalled seeing them at a family barbecue, where she witnessed him messaging other women without any shame. For much of the marriage, Rowan was able to keep the darkness of their relationship under wraps. He simply projected a fake persona. He was able to portray to the masses that any bad rumours about him were malicious lies against a good guy, someone that was just trying to get by and do the right things in life. He had this mesmerising ability to make people feel bad for him, but Hannah's family saw right through it. When he couldn't fool Hannah's siblings or parents, Rowan did everything he could to isolate her from them. Textbook behaviour. Hannah's mother explained, "We'd go down to the coast, and if they turned up and saw us there, they would go to another beach." Rowan's control over Hannah only became worse as time went on, and more people were beginning to notice. One of Hannah's good friends, Manya Wali, worked in a domestic maltreatment field. She tried to talk to her at length about the way that Rowan was treating her. Manya asked Hannah if Rowan had ever threatened to harm her or her children, to which she simply replied no and denied that she was being abused by her husband. Hannah did, however, talk with Manya about the fact that Rowan had threatened to harm a previous partner when she tried to leave him. As she encouraged Hannah to open up about her relationship, the things that Hannah did discuss was Rowan's control over her life and over her children. He also demanded intimate time from her daily, and when she refused, he would prohibit her from going to the gym or spending quality time with her kids, using the two things that she loved the most in the world as a weapon against her. He would constantly look through her messages on social media with clients, accusing her of cheating on him with any male name that he saw, even names that Rowan knew personally through the gym. In response to this, he would take any money that Hannah had, and then blame her for being an incompetent spender. Manya, upon listening to Hannah's claims, did her best to explain the very real danger of her relationship with her husband. She explains the realities of emotional, intimate, and financial maltreatment, trying to make her understand that what she was experiencing was domestic abuse, that this certainly wasn't love, and it definitely wasn't healthy. And eventually, with the support of her friends and family, on December the 5th, 2018, Hannah finally gained the courage to leave Rowan after 11 years together. She left secretly while he was away from the house. This was so that he couldn't intimidate her into staying. This strength on the part of Hannah turned Rowan into a kind of villain that Hannah had never seen before. He had become a menace. His almost total loss of control, igniting a flame inside him that he simply couldn't contain. Hannah did her best to make the separation cordial for the children, allowing Rowan to see his children on occasion. Despite her efforts, her estranged husband would make every meeting tense and aggressive, with one of his visits ending with him kidnapping one of the kids for 4 days.
And he took the middle one and just took off with her in my car. And now he's trying to play games with me on the phone.
I know it's frustrating. I know it's his...
I don't object to him actually seeing the kids. I just...
What's his name?
Rowan Baxter. Because he does this, he's fine for 1 minute and then the next minute...
Is it stemming from anything or is it just a separation?
The fact that I left. Yeah, so there's been a lot of domestic violence. Not physical but emotional, controlling, etc. for a long time, and it just got too much. I just couldn't do it anymore. I've been speaking with Constable at the Carina station, and we've been in talks of whether or not to get a DVO, but the only reason I didn't is because I was scared that it would antagonise the situation more, and I thought that by keeping them with me would prevent something like this happening.
So you've dropped the kids over, or picking them up from Hannah, and she's found some photos of her in your car, and then you've grabbed her on the arm. So that's basically the information we've got.
On this occasion, Hannah was packing up the kids from a visit, and Rowan wanted them to stay the night. And then, when Hannah refused, he grabbed their daughter out of her arms and ran down the street, throwing her into a car and then driving away. Hannah had to get the police involved to regain custody of her child, a child that had endured trauma at the hands of her husband. These events led Hannah to file a court order of domestic violence against Rowan, urging him to be cordial with Hannah at risk of being arrested. But this order would prove to be useless against Hannah's ex-husband. Things would only get worse, with Rowan assaulting Hannah in front of his friend's home, almost breaking her wrist. And because of this newest offence, Rowan wasn't allowed within 20 metres of Hannah. But of course, this didn't stop him. Rowan stalked Hannah wherever she went, and he convinced his friends to send her malicious emails, detailing how awful she was as a wife and as a mother. He somehow found a way to track her, sending her cryptic messages and photos of the places that she would go, and he was even able to put a recording device in her home. It was at this point that one of Hannah's friends paid a visit to the police station, telling officers that she was in fear for Hannah's life. Rowan had by this point claimed that he was going to take Hannah out, inciting fear in the minds of everyone close to his ex-wife. This included Rowan's own family members. The officers' only response was that they could not intervene unless Rowan actually harmed her. This decision by the police would prove to be one that would lead to unspeakable devastation. Hannah was being broken down. She even casually said that Rowan was trying to end her life, and now she saw no way of stopping his vendetta against her. All this time, Rowan continued to keep up appearances on social media. He posted loving photos of his children and played into the perfect man persona as much as he could. He even said that he couldn't bear to be without his wife. His social media posts caused people to send nasty messages to Hannah, crucifying her for leaving such a good and honest man. The mental turmoil that Hannah endured from leaving Rowan could have even been worse than when they were together. But Hannah, being Hannah, continued to persevere. She was a strong woman and a dedicated mother. She leaned on her family and friends. The support they gave her throughout these months was invaluable. And by the end of 2019, Hannah was optimistic about the year ahead. She told her sister-in-law that 2020 was going to be a great year. She was now progressing towards a new life with her kids, a new life for herself. On February the 19th, 2020, Hannah's optimism would be squashed yet again. Hannah was loading her 3 children into the car to take them to school when Rowan came out of nowhere and jumped in the passenger seat. Hannah promptly told Rowan to get out of the car, saying that he was violating the court order that she had against him. This is when Hannah noticed that Rowan was holding a knife and a jerry can, a vessel used to carry petrol or gasoline. Now, fearing for the safety of her children, Hannah listened to Rowan when he directed her to start driving. As she drove, he poured the petrol from the jerry can all over the inside of the car. Things were escalating extremely quickly, a frenzied blur of panic and emotions that is difficult to even begin to imagine. Hannah didn't make it far down the road before she saw a man washing his car. She started screaming for help and tried to escape the vehicle. But before the man could make it over to her, Rowan exited the car. He ignited a lighter and threw it inside. The car contained Hannah and the 3 children. As she was set ablaze, Hannah jumped from the car and continued to scream, this time for someone to save her children. Just as this horror was unfolding, an off-duty paramedic was driving by and saw the commotion. They quickly pulled over to help in any way possible. The original bystander used a hose meant for washing his car in an attempt to douse the flames off of Hannah, hoping that he had made it in time. Even as Hannah continued to be engulfed in flames, the only thoughts and words she could say were for the welfare of her children. She continued screaming that her children were still inside the car. She said, "Why didn't I just stay in there with them? My babies. Someone help them." By the time police arrived, Hannah mustered up all of her remaining strength. She gave them every detail of what had just occurred, including the fact that she had a domestic abuse order against Rowan. Unfortunately, Hannah's children had already passed when police arrived on the scene. The car was already completely ablaze by the time anyone even noticed that they were strapped inside.
The lady was screaming on the ground, "Help me, help me." I went over to try and help her. She finally said to me, "There are kids in the car." When I heard that, I went to run around and I've heard the first explosion. As that's happened, I backed from the car. My little brother stopped me from going any closer. As that's happened, the second one's exploded and the car started rolling down the street. As that's happened, I looked around. It's around school time for kids, and I've just found out there's kids in the car. I stopped behind the car, held it, yelled. Don't know how the car stopped in the middle of the road. Burnt my hand, tried to get in. I'm not left with any marks, just a blister. Tried to get in, open the door, and there was a child dead. And yeah, we tried to do what we could to help, and unfortunately, we were too late.
Hannah's ex-husband was found on the other side of the car in the street. He had ended his own life after leaping from the car to avoid the flames, the evidence of which was still sticking out of his chest. Even if Rowan had survived, Hannah's shockingly detailed account and her physical state was all police needed to know exactly what had occurred. Despite Hannah's desperate fight for life, she passed away just a couple of days later. The only part of her body left intact was the bottom of her feet.
4 months before the fatal fire, police body cam records a condescending Rowan Baxter blaming his wife because one of their cars was unregistered, and police pulled them over.
Because I thought the rego I thought was due in October.
Talk to me about it, because it's your car.
Upon inspection of Rowan's phone, investigators found a long, in-depth letter of his plans to end Hannah's life. He began writing the letter in January, finally choosing to carry it out the following month. He wrote about how he was tired of playing Hannah's game, and that he would end it without hesitation. This letter gave police insight into the truly deranged mind of Rowan Baxter, and the lengths he would go to always have control over his family, even if that meant that they and he would no longer be on this earth. Hannah's family held a public vigil for Hannah, her parents choosing to wear pink in her honour, and to denounce everything that her attacker stood for.